Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be uppotting my summer seedlings, tomatoes and marigolds, things that are large enough for me to uppot them into larger containers. But before we get to that, I'm going to do that inside because it's still a little bit chilly. I wanted to show you two things that I'm excited about. First one, hold on. The first one are the daffodils. We're getting buds. That means they're going to bloom soon. Super excited about that. This one too is looking really good. Awesome. Spring colors finally getting here. And then the second thing is that our landscaping project for phase 2 is starting this week, and our landscaper folks delivered these things yesterday. Now you would think that having a porta potty on the property is not a it's not a happy event, but to me it is, because it means our phase 2 project is going to be starting soon. So that's very exciting. All right, let's go inside and I'll show you how to uppot seedlings. All right, so this is my setup to uppot our seedlings. Obviously, I've got the seedlings, which obviously you can't do that without them. I'm only going to do the tomatoes, the marigolds, maybe the basil, because they're getting pretty large too. Maybe that Thai basil there. The rest I'll just leave them in these little pods until they grow a little bit bigger. And for spring stuff, if you watched in the previous video, I didn't. I transplanted them directly from the pods to the beds outside. But for the summer stuff, because they're living in these pods or they're living indoors for a little bit longer, I'm going to uppot them, put them in actual soil. These are just peat pods, right? Where there's not many nutrients in there. So I have been fertilizing every couple of weeks, but it's better to get them into a larger container so that their roots can continue to grow and they'll get a little bit more nutrients. So I've got the tray of seedlings. I'm going to be putting the uppotted ones in here just for easy transport. I've got my set of cups, which I've been using these for years over and over again. Let me just try to get one out here. And I put, does this one have one? No. You pierce the bottom. I just did it with what did I use? Either a skewer or something sharp. You just pierce a hole. And then I just mark whatever it was in any given year. And I'll usually color code. Like last year, I think it was black, and the year before was blue. And I'll just write what it is on the container so that I don't lose track. So I have that. I have my gloves because it's going to be messy. I have my paper, my plan of what was planted where in this tray. Although by now seedlings kind of look what they're supposed to look like, so they're easier to identify. But I still have it. And then I just dumped a bunch of soil into this plastic container just for easier transport. Normally I'd either do this outside or in just someplace a little bit more practical than my dining room table, but it's still cold outside and there's nowhere else to do it. So we're going to get going. All right, let's get started. So I got 8 cups ready for one set of tomatoes. I'm going to start with the sun sugar. So I'm just going to write them, and I'll write them the same way so that it's consistent for this year. Now sun sugar, you know what, I'll put 25, sun sugar 25, so I know that it's this year. I'll do this really quickly. SS25. Yeah, I mean, I've been using, you can use any container you want. I've used the red Solo cups. I've used these for a long time. And I just reuse them over and over again. I know it's styrofoam, guys, but it's not like I'm buying new ones every year and putting them in a landfill. I figure it's something that won't deteriorate. They're pretty tough. And if I'm reusing them, I don't feel so bad. Same thing with the red Solo cups. The only thing with the Solo cups is you have to make sure to add some drainage to it. So I cut slits in the bottom. Don't use your good scissors for that. And that worked fine. And then I just put them in a seedling tray. And I just stack them up here and put this tray right back under the grow lights. So let's get going. All right, so sun sugar is this first row at the top here. And then if you watch the video of when I transplanted the spring crops, I removed the mesh before planting them outside. I'm going to do the same thing here. just because obviously I'm going to be putting some extra soil and putting the seedling inside this container around the mesh, so I don't want to do that. Obviously, if you're using cubes or blocks or anything else that doesn't have this mesh, just take the seedling, put them in the larger container and just add soil and you're good to go. Again, just be careful of the roots, but again, you know, plants are resilient. They're pretty tough. They're tougher than you think. Now, for tomatoes, obviously, normally you'd plant them as deep as you can go in a container, but obviously if I do that, it's not tall enough yet. So I'm going to put a little bit of soil in the bottom, just enough. And it's okay to bury part of the stem. You know what? It's encouraged because then it grows out roots all along the stem. So what I'm going to do, just going to scoop in some soil here from my container next to me, and then just plop this in. See, that's okay. That looks good. Here's my label, Sun Sugar 25. And then just add some soil in around it. And I'll bring this over here so you can see what I'm doing. And it's messy, but it's not, you know, it's not hard. And just stick it in there. And that's it. There's one. I'll water everything at the end. And depending on how many I have or how many I do today, I've got 8 Sun Sugar, 8 Sweet 100, 4 of the Estorina tomatoes. That's 8. We'll see. We'll see how many I fit. I might have to get another tray, or I'll just put them back in the tray where the space is vacated up here where the seedlings are. But we'll see. One seedling, one done. Oh, this one's really small. You know what? I'm going to do it anyway. See how tiny it is? This was one of the later ones that I had to reseed because it didn't germinate the first time. But it's all good. You don't have to, I mean, in theory, you could probably start them in here and just let them grow. I'm just used to packing them all in while they germinate, just for real estate, for space in my seed starting setup. So I filled in about that much, just so that it's not too deep. And then plop that in and then just add soil around it. That's it. Second one. And again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the video, but make sure you have drainage in these things because you don't want them sitting in water. I think there's another little one here that didn't germinate. Oh, this one's really small. So you know what? Based on this, I'm not going to transplant this because I have, and I needed 6 plants of the Sun Sugar type based on what my plan was. And this one is not. It would probably grow and catch up, but I have better seedlings, so I'm just going to leave that one aside and move on to the next one. See what I mean? Like there's no point in transplanting this guy if I have several like this that are much further along and much healthier looking. All right, so we'll take the mesh off. And that's for tomatoes. For tomatoes, you want to plant them as deep as you can. Now I see that there are 2 here. So in theory, I should take one out and you can just snap it off. I wouldn't pull it in case the roots are attached to the other one. So you just snap it off and put it aside. Yes, so I was saying tomatoes you should plant as deep as you can. Just because roots actually do form from the stem here. And the more roots they have, the stronger they'll grow. So let me get this one going. For other plants, for other seedlings, you just want to plant them as deep as the root ball is. But for tomatoes, that's okay. And then grab some soil. All right. That's 3. Now I'm going to do this for all the tomatoes, the marigolds. I think I'm going to do the basil today. They look, once they start getting, you know, looking like with their true leaves and they've established, they can be up potted. And I'm probably going to leave these in these containers until I plant them out. Usually the May long weekend, weather permitting, depending on what the 10-day forecast is around that time. Nights cannot be below 10 Celsius for at least 10 days. That's kind of the benchmark for tomatoes and frost tender plants. So I'm going to go through all of this and I'll circle back at the end and show you what we've done. All right, tomatoes are done, and I was able to get 7 of the sun sugar, 8 of the sweet 100, and 4 Asterina, and I really packed them in tight in the tray. One, so that they don't shimmy around or get knocked over or whatnot, but it just helps keep them. Work with me here. All right. And then I kind of figured out how many, just putting some empty ones in, how many empty spaces or what else I can fit in here. And I have enough to put in the basil. So I'll put the basil here. Oh, look. Oh my God. Oh, I wish you could smell that. Oh, it's so good. Okay, I'm going to put the, I get distracted very easily. So I'm going to put the basil here. And then I'm probably going to need another one of these trays to put in to pot the marigolds. And look at what I saw, what was hiding between the marigolds and the tomatoes. Look at the thyme. This is thyme. This is summertime. And I obviously seeded a lot more than I probably should have in these things. I'm almost tempted to just leave them be. I don't know how big each one of these plants gets. I don't know. I'll have to see. That's a decision for a few minutes from now. So I'm just focusing on one thing at a time. All right, I'm gonna do the basil, and the basil, it's the same thing as the tomatoes. Tomatoes, obviously, as I mentioned before, you typically plant them as deep as you can. Basil, just as deep as the root ball. The root ball. I know there's not really a root ball right now because they're so tiny, but as much as as deep as, you know. Let me see. Yeah, see, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And then I'll just add the soil in on the sides. Ooh. And then I'll come back and water everything. And I don't have to mark the cups for this one. I know exactly what this is. Ah, oh, summer. All right, we're going to do the basil, and then I'll swap out the trays, and then we'll get to part 2 of uppotting. Okay, basil is done. I'm going to water these in, and then I want to grab an extra tray. So watering in, I mean, it's not rocket science. And sometimes you'll see that the soil will settle a little bit. You might want to add more. I just usually let them do their thing. And one of the other reasons to up-pot things, first reason is obviously if they're going to be indoors for a longer amount of time, you just want them to have more space, good soil, more nutrients, and whatnot. But the other reason, at least for me, you know what, let me put this down. So for example, I had all of my seedlings in one tray just to start them, but I'll show you an example here. We'll use the thyme again. So in the same tray, I've got these, which are growing a lot taller, and this lemon balm, which is just starting. So my lights would have to go higher and higher to accommodate the tall plants, but that would take it away from the small ones that aren't ready yet. So by up-potting these, putting them in a different tray with a different light height, I could keep the lights, these ones, these little short ones, in a tray with the lights much closer down to the seedlings, which is what they need. Finish this. Where was I? Oh, this one. Yeah, so although having the lights higher than the seedlings, like you could do it, they get leggy, it's a bit of a problem. They get weaker. It's not recommended. I've tried before. I mean, I've had mixed success with leggy seedlings. And then when I just paid more attention to the light and to how close that light was to the seedlings and just lifted. Now, I don't lift my lights, as I think I've covered in a previous video. I put a box, I leave my lights where they are because they're on this little stand, and then I'll just put a box under the tray and lift the tray higher. But now, like, I can't have the light close because for the reasons I just explained, because for some it'll be close enough, but for others it won't. So that means half my seedlings would get enough light and the other half wouldn't, which would, they would suffer. They wouldn't get what they needed. And that's the other thing. Like when you're growing stuff indoors, same as with houseplants, right? Like all they get in terms of nutrients is what you give them. So it's important that to make sure that they have the right soil, you fertilize. I do it every couple of weeks for seedlings, just to give them nutrients because they're not getting sun, they're not getting, you know, rain. They love rain for the nitrogen. I think we're good here. And obviously, because you've got drainage holes in the bottom of these little containers, make sure you put it in a tray that doesn't have holes. Important. Don't forget that part. All right, I think we're good. We're good for this tray. Next, I'm gonna do the marigolds. I'll do the thyme, borage, and Thai basil. I think the rest I'm just gonna leave them, or I might move them to a little tray like this guy, like a little tray, just because there's so fewer. There's not as many, but I just need to make sure that it's consistently for the height of the light. All right, part 2, part 3, part 4, I've lost track. Anyway, it's all good. We're gonna get them all done today. I also wanted to show you how to pierce these things. So I use one of these wooden skewers. You can find them anywhere. And then just look, there's usually like a little center, I don't know if you can see that, like a little dot in the middle of the bottom of these cups. And then I just take that and pop it out. Give it a little bit of room. There you go. There's a hole. And that's enough. If you want to put more, you can. But one has been working perfectly fine for me for years. And that's what I do. Okay. Marigolds, I don't need to label. Thyme, I don't need to label because I know what it looks like. I probably will once I get to uppotting the others. What is this? This is parsley. You can start seeing it. I'm going to label that when we get to it. But I'm not going to pot those up. Doing the marigolds, the thyme, that's 12, 13, 14. How many can I fit in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or what I could do is that'll be 4, 4, 16. I could probably do that. Or I will put them in here and leave the short ones in the small one because I have fewer of those. You know what? That is what we're going to do. All right, let's get to it. Okay, I uppotted the marigolds, the borage. I did one parsley. I left the other one in the little tray with all my small ones. The only ones remaining in there there was one tomato. I left it there just in case, just because I don't want to throw it out. You know how it is. I have the 4 lemon balm. I have 2 mints, 2 Thai basil. One hasn't come up yet, so this might be a dud. We'll have to see. And then the other parsley. And then in here, it's the 12 marigolds, the 2 borage, 1 parsley, the 2 thyme, the Thai basil, and the 2 columbines. I started with 4, which I had seeded, or I had harvested seeds from my plants at the old house last year. And I'm down to 2. We'll see how they go, but since they're getting a little bit large, I might as well put them all together. And let me water these guys in. And then I think that's going to be it for the uppotting today. Now, let me just get this done real quick. And then I won't fertilize these until next week, most likely. Just with your regular balanced fertilizer. That's what I use. I use the, what do I use? It's from ProMix. And I'm trying to remember what it is. It's like 633. It's like just your generic vegetable fertilizer. And then what? And then that's it. And then this one I'll put under its own tray. These ones I'll put back under another tray, but the light, under its own light. And then this one I'm going to put, but closer, because they're still so small and they need the light like super close to them, like 2 inches above. And I think that's it for uppotting for today. And then once these ones get tall enough, I'll do the same. Now, it all depends on, typically I'll move these out. I'll start hardening off the week before the May long weekend for the week. Bring them out a little bit longer each day, weather permitting. And then if that 10-day forecast has nights above 10 degrees Celsius, that's about 50 Fahrenheit, then I'll start planning to transplant them out into the garden beds, into the raised beds. Otherwise, I'll just keep them inside until that 2 weeks, that 2-week forecast looks good. And I think that's it for today. we're getting closer. We're getting closer. All of the spring stuff looks good outside. I'll probably do a tour at some point. I was excited to see leaves on the raspberry bushes. That was pretty cool. And I think I saw a bud on the strawberry. I'll have to take another look in a few days to see if what I saw is what I really saw or if it's just wishful thinking. It could be. We'll see. But that's it. Onward. Up potting. Very important. The only time I up potted to a solo cup, especially for the tomatoes, it was because they were getting really, really tall and the weather wasn't cooperating. So I up potted them again and put the lights. I had to take a tray off my seed starting area because they were getting so tall, and they were outgrowing even this container. So I up potted them from this to solo cups just to give them some, more soil, more room for the roots and more nutrients and whatnot. And you know what? Mother Nature's the boss. You go with the flow. Like, you're the boss of your garden. You do what you want, but she is the ultimate boss. she tells us what we can and cannot do. That was quite the year, and just finding the space for all those solo cups was quite an ordeal. But anyway, we managed. Everything was a good harvest that year. It is what it is. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Gardening requires patience and the willingness to adapt, because you just don't know what's going to happen, and it's really the weather that dictates everything. All right, guys, that's it for today. I'll see you next time.